Hello, John Dove here from the Advocacy Club. So tonight we've had our bail application session of the Advocacy Club. So our members have all been performing bail applications in relation to a defendant charged with a Section 47 assault occasioning actual bodily harm. So I'm just going to give some general feedback now in relation to some of the things that I've witnessed tonight and some general tips in relation to the bail application. So starting with some general tips, the key thing with the bail application is you need to remember your job is to be persuasive. So you need to convince the court why it is that your client should be granted bail. So you need to keep it persuasive. And one way you can do that is to try and be concise in your submissions. It's very easy to sort of waffle on and go on for too long, and you can miss the key parts of your argument. You can miss the key points. So by talking for too long, you can potentially miss or you can sort of lose the bench that you're trying to convince. So I think being concise is quite important. Another point which I'm going to come on to later is to generally start with your best points as well. So you might have, there might be one reason for which the Crown have opposed bail. So it could be interfering with witnesses, for example. And you might have 3 or 4 points on how you can deal with that. If you have, start with the best point first and then work backwards, because that way you're going to be as convincing as you possibly can be. And when it comes to each individual opposition to bail, so for example, in this particular situation, we had 3, which was potentially interfering with witnesses, commit further offences, or fail to surrender to bail. So there's 2 ways that you can deal with each of those concerns. The first is you can undermine or try to question why they would be legitimate oppositions to bail. Or alternatively, if you can't, and if there's a, potentially that is a legitimate reason to oppose bail, then you can suggest potential bail conditions that could deal with that point, that can allay any fears of the court. So they're the 2 ways that you can deal with each of those points. So coming on to what I've witnessed tonight, what I did see a little bit was sort of formulaic arguments. So some people were starting by saying, "Hi, my name is, I represent the defendant in this case. Would you like a summary of the facts?" In a case like this, it's not really necessary, because if you think about it, of course, tonight's scenario is quite artificial, but in a real courtroom, if you were standing up to do a bail application, by the time you get to that point, the prosecutor has already stood up and opened the case, presented the opposition to bail. So the magistrates have clearly read the papers. They know what the case is about. The facts have been outlined for them. So there'd be no real need in a real situation to do anything like that. And then taking that one step further in terms of how formulaic you go, I saw a few people tonight that were referencing various parts of the Bail Act. I'm going to cite paragraph 9. No real need for this, because when you're in court, whomever your tribunal are will be dealing with the Bail Act day in, day out. They know it. So you can be assumed that they know all of the relevant provisions, particularly if it's quite a common bail application like this one is. So the key point, you don't really need to be going through the sort of legal provisions in that regard. In terms of some general presentation points as well, as a general rule, try not to be reading too much. If you're in court, it's likely that you've taken instructions, you've jotted a few things down, so you wouldn't have a full script there anyway. So you might be glancing down, but for the most part, you'll be making eye contact with the magistrate or the judge in order in order to present your application. Think about pace as well. You don't want to be speaking too quickly. The quicker you speak, the less persuasive you are. So you want to speak at a nice, slow pace. You can emphasize certain words. So I saw, for example, tonight, someone was talking about the potential opposition to bail, which was, excuse me, the defendant is unlikely to surrender, unlikely to turn up. In those circumstances, the answer to this was, well, he's always attended court apart from the one occasion when he accidentally failed to attend. So, the individual that did this punched that word, really emphasized the word accidentally. And you can do that. You can use intonation. You can emphasize certain words, and it really helps to make your argument much more persuasive rather than just having this sort of one monotone level. One other thing that was done quite well was at the end of the submissions, the package of bail conditions was repeated to the court. So it was suggested throughout, how the various conditions can deal with each of the potential oppositions to bail. But at the end, in the conclusion, these were all summed up again, and the court were reminded about what this package of bail conditions will be. And there was a nice sort of phrase that was used, which was, this is a robust package of bail that would deal with any concerns. And that's the last thing that the court hears, and potentially that can be the difference between a remand and conditional bail. So I hope that those tips were helpful.